So it's not every day that an artist gives me an orange, but I thought it was actually one of the most sweetest gift a human being has ever given to me. Not counting animals, but I'm just joking. And that's the reason why I'm really excited about today's Sesi Seni, because we got Dhavinder Singh here. I had the luxury of actually meeting him yesterday and having coffee and discovering who he is as an artist, as an individual. And he has a literal story to tell that would hit you on a primal level, that when you see his art and you match it with who he is as an artist, you can understand what art really means in the macro picture of civilization, of humanity, and maybe even the meaning of reality itself. And figure out. Thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Actually, I was actually quite happy to have you here because, like, as you noticed, I called you my friend because yesterday, you know, one of the things that really stuck out to me about who you are, right? And I really see it the day after when I look at your exhibition. You know, you told me that you're the type of person who, what you see is what you get, you know, and that was in context. Maybe we were saying how some people, they like to have a professional version, and then there's the hangout after work version, and then you were like, you know, I like to be straight, I like to be truthful, and then we went on this, we're gonna get into it obviously because your artwork had to do with that. So my question is like, you know, do you think it's important as an artist to be truly honest and not have like a false brand image, so to speak? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's true. I've always been honest with my work, with my practice, and never kind of pretend to be someone else that I'm not. And whatever I created in past years and whatever I've done here in Penang over the past 6 months has been quite, I don't know, I think the whole environment and the surroundings kind of changed some aspects of my work in a sense, but apart from that, I think there's still a lot of remnants of the past which still occurs in my work. Yeah. So, like for example, as you said, you just mentioned earlier, like why is it there's a lot of void and a lot of negative space in the works, and so I've always tend to have a lot of play of space in my work in that sense. Yeah.
And for those of you who are just watching the video, we were actually conversing before the camera started rolling. One of the things I said was I love the fact that a lot of his work has wide open spaces that it could breathe. And I know those of you who are watching this video, but the audience here, you can tell that the exhibition itself, it's relatively bare except on the walls. So not only does the artwork have this breadth of space, the physical space itself has that breadth of space. And I noticed that when we were talking yesterday, that you're a very contemplative person. Like you think about your surroundings a lot, the meanings behind it. And you were telling me the story that when you first started off, you started off with chairs. And it was, correct me if I got the story right, it's been like 24 hours, but essentially like you saw this old chair, was it at your grandmother's or a friend's place? I think it was a friend's place. And then you noticed that there was a story there, you looked into it, and you saw what it could be in the three-dimensional space of your surroundings, of the place that you lived in, and then that was sort of the inspiration that you had with chairs and your, what we called it yesterday, your chair period.
Actually, it was not a friend's place. It was just pretty much being a very observant person and a person who likes to sit and contemplate a lot.
Yeah.
In front of a blank canvas or in front of a blank space. So there's always a chair present for me to sit and contemplate, right? So, but then again, I think it was about probably 7 or 8 years ago, I kind of started using the chair as a symbol of, to portray myself, to be in my own works, like, you know, to be available in my own works.
Wow.
That's when I started using chairs as some sort of a metaphor. Yeah, so this time around, I think since last year, since before my my residency at Rainbow Dahan last year, I kind of started like focusing really on the physical matter of the chair. So I kind of started making my own chairs out of discarded materials and what else? Yeah, so found objects and all that. So it's pretty much of a collage of real stuff that you find around, rather than like a typical way of making collages, which is using paper and glue and cutting it and pasting it. So it's the same process as well, but then again it's different because these are like physical objects which are there, and they were previously part of a furniture, but now I've like kind of deconstructed them and made it into something which is quite. Remember I told you that I've always kind of reflected myself through a chair as a self-portrait. So hence this time around, it's not me, but I'm still present in my own works, but in a form of a chair. Yeah.
I'm trying. I literally had this image of you as a chair, but but no, I totally get what you mean. It's like you are trying to. And correct me if I'm wrong, like, you know, like these items that you chose, you mentioned it yesterday where, because everything had a history and then it was discarded, and then you felt like you could take these things and then make your vision of what reality could be. Because we were talking about, you know, human civilization and why we have this need to build, to leave a legacy, and you thought that was quite similar, you know. Do you think that was translated into some of the paintings you had here today? Do you think it shares the same reverence that you have for the woodwork or that you did with the chairs and canvas, or are they two different parts of?
No, I think they're same. They're similar. It's just different medium, different approach towards a two-dimensional work and a three-dimensional work. So it's just pretty much quite connected to each other. There's no vast difference. Yeah.
And the thing is, I told you I was going to touch on this subject, but like, you know how when you first start an artwork or piece or sculpture, right? We were talking about, even I myself, when I'm on a new project, I get anxiety, and I asked you, do you get anxiety when you're doing your artwork? Because your method, you were explaining to me yesterday, was almost like Dali. You take like if it's a canvas, you sometimes splotch it and then you see where it goes, or you see a piece of wood and then you start carving into it, not knowing really you have a vision in your head, but you don't know what the journey is like, you know, which is like life. But, you know, this is more for like everybody who's watching this, you know, how important it is, do you think, that every other artist, every other person at home who's like, I'm not an artist because I'm not that good, that anxiety that we all go through, how important is it to fight through it to get through the end of the vision?
I think it starts off with a blank mind, obviously, and then from there you kind of develop that whole intuition to do something. And it starts off with a very simple plain line, and from there that plain line tends to become something which is a little bit more informative, you know, like a bit more visually informative. With my fascination towards interior spaces and exterior spaces of buildings and whatnot, so I've always integrated those aspects into the work. Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned like lines, and you told me yesterday that people thought you were an architect because of your love of symmetry and lines. Yeah. But then you said that actually at some point you did learn, like you learned it from somebody, a friend of a friend or a friend, how to do set design for theater.
Yeah.
And then that's when you knew how to play with space, or you saw the similarities between an exhibition and the performance theater. And then that also dictated from then on how you treated space. And it didn't really hit me that you also meant space
within my...
Yeah, in your canvas and stuff. Like, I was wondering if you could expand to that, because I thought that was a very good session yesterday, and I was wondering if you could like recreate what you told me for the cameras.
Okay, I'll try.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so it started off with, I think it's not necessarily, it started off with these people which I worked with as a collective, which I think began in 2021. The collective is called Sense Collective. So I've been working with them. They're all theatre background people, actors, performers, dancers, set designers. I've pretty much like learned a lot from these folks about how to divide space and how to manage space to create a certain amount of effect or certain type of effect. But for me, it's nothing really new. I've always dealt with space in my work. And the way how I display my work, or even though how I set up my own studio, it always has a lot of breathing room for you to just sit and look around and see what can I add here, or what can I add there, or what can I subtract from here, or what can I subtract from there. At the end of the day, it's just how I have managed space physically in reality, and also onto my works. So yeah, I think space plays a really, really important role in my work, not just my everyday life, but then again, it has appeared in most of my previous series of exhibitions I've done. I've always played around with how to compose a certain given space for me to kind of add on to. Yeah.
So is that what's happening here in terms of the wide open spaces in the exhibition, in your artwork, that because you grew up in a very, like you said, a cluttered environment where I'm sure my grandparents were the same, like this furniture everywhere, like 17 vases, you know, whatever. But do you think that had something to do with it, where that's come out into your adulthood, into your creation here today, where that open space provides you comfort or freedom?
Solace. Yeah.
Solace. Wow. Do you think that's inadvertently or consciously even, that was what you're trying to do as a message, where you're trying to provide solace for others who...
Not really. I'm trying to satisfy myself at the end of the day.
So it's like self-therapy.
Yeah. So it's never pleasing others, so it's always pleasing myself first. Because I think that's what an artist should do at the end of the day, because art requires freedom, right?
Yeah.
So if you say you're an artist and then you're dictated by certain things or certain entities or galleries or collectors or whatever it is, they always tend to tell you that, oh, you should paint it this way, you should paint it that way, you should make it this big, you should make it this small, and you should make this many works for me to sell and whatnot. But I've been through that circuit over the years, but it kind of, I felt like I couldn't breathe. You know, I couldn't express myself thoroughly the way I want to. So that's why I told you that I did burn a lot of bridges.
Yeah, and I told you, like, I've done the same occasionally from time to time.
So I think burning those bridges kind of allowed me to kind of find myself, how I want to do things. And I think that's what built that whole characteristic of mine. Yeah, so they've always, like, I think in KL, if you go to KL and people ask you, like, oh yeah, who's Dhavinder Singh? Oh yeah, he's this Punjabi artist, you know, who does stuff like this, and he's got a loud mouth, blah, 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 you know. So, but then again, I don't care about all that. Yeah. For me, it's like what I create at the end of the day which matters most, right? Whether you like it or you dislike it is up to you. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
As long as I'm satisfied. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope you are.
Yeah,
because I really
definitely
do genuinely enjoy your work.
And I would like to thank, you know, Ivan for.
Thank you, Ivan. Ivan Gabriel.
Who kind of allowed me to do that here in Penang.
Penang's best curator.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, what also moved me as well, and hence why even before we started, it's like, move to the island, stay here forever. Because you were saying that when you had that transition between Kuala Lumpur and then you finally came to Penang, you felt like the vibe in Penang was a little bit more receptive and open, as opposed to, like, KL was filled with people who were like little Napoleons in their own right, saying it's like, that's not art, we won't hang it, as opposed to here is like, just do it, bro, that's awesome, you know?
I'll give you one really good example of what happened in 2020. I did a solo show called Tagistan. Tagistan was the show about, it was based on memory, it was based about my upbringing, and it was kind of a homage towards my grandparents and the whole area they used to live in, like, you know, the place they used to live in, which is called Chan Saolin. And it's very dear to me because I think spaces like this or places like this don't exist anymore in KL, where it's a whole community of people kind of get together and they work things out, you know, even though they're undervalued or they're underprivileged or whatever it is. So the whole communal feel, which I felt during my childhood, I feel it here.
In Penang?
In Penang, because it's,
wow.
I think it's very community-based.
Sorry guys, you're gonna have to give like round of applause for yourselves, man. Penang, good job, Penang.
No, it's true, it's true. This is like coming from someone who comes from KL, from the city, you know, the hustle and bustle of it and the whole fast-paced lifestyle. And for me here, Penang kind of allows me to sit back, you know, just look at the bigger picture and see what can I make out of it at the end of the day, right? And plus with the history of Penang, of Georgetown itself, I'm super intrigued by it. You know, I definitely want to explore further about what Penang got to offer me at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. And now is kind of like the questions I want to ask about the tangible things, because what I'm also hoping is that whoever's watching this, you know, they're able to sort of learn. Like, say for example, if it's a student or somebody who is like, I want to be an artist, but I don't know where to start. I like to ask those who I'm interviewing, like, you know, what are their own journeys in the tangible reality of the art world, how they navigate it or failed to, you know, so at least they understand that art is still very much I hate to say it, a business sometimes. There are cliques, there are gatekeepers like any other industry, and sometimes as an artist you have to pick and choose your locations that best suits you and encourage your own growth. So, well, you mentioned earlier that you burned a couple of bridges, and I was like, yeah, me too. But maybe you could explain more about that. What was your journey like, and what you had to do to break out?
Just to piss people off. You know, you got to piss people off.
I knew he would like it. Be true, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I think as an artist you have the liberty to do so, right? You're not condoned to anybody's rules or regulations or anything which is like if you work for an institution, you are always bounded to some sort of rules and regulations, right? But if you're an artist, I don't think so you should be bound to any sort of rules and regulations, because I think that's the reason why I picked this career, this career path. Of course, my parents were not happy about it. My mom was very supportive. She still is, because she's a creative person herself. You know, she's a makeup artist. You know, you can give her anything in front of her and she can draw it or sketch it the way it is. You know, like it's just naturally gifted. I think some of that kind of brushed off on me. You know, some of that mojo. Yeah. So and plus she was kind of the rebel of the family.
That's why you're like a rebel yourself.
Yeah. So being a Sikh, being a Punjabi, and doing arts, becoming an artist is almost considered a taboo.
Oh yeah, I understand.
You know? Yeah. So like most Punjabi boys or girls, their parents want them to have a professional path, right? You know, you'll be a doctor, or an engineer, or a lawyer, or whatnot. So for me, my late dad wanted me to be an aeronautical engineer.
Wow.
So I was like, well, what am I going to do with this? You know, like, I love planes. You know, he got me a whole encyclopedia of all the fighter jets from pre-World War to post-World War. To, you know, like I grew up with all that information in me. But then again, it didn't spark any sort of interest at the end of the day. So I was just like a bit more keen towards having a free mind and doing what I want to do without any sort of dictation. Yeah. So joining in art school, dropping out of my previous course and joining in art school was, I think, the best decision that I've made. Even though there's struggles, of course, I think every artist, you know, we go through our struggling period. You know, sometimes we still struggle. Yeah, so, but then again, you always find solace in those struggling moments when you have created something and you have done something, you have done a whole body of work, and then you sit back and you look at it and it's like, oh wow, did I just create this? And then you tend to think about it. How did I make this? Where did it come from, right? So sometimes I sit and contemplate, like I was just, a few days ago I was here walking around looking at my own work. And I was just thinking to myself, like, how did I get from where I was to here? Like, how did that happen? So I think it was just pure stubbornness, you know, like pure passion as well. So
that you just did not want to be an aerospace engineer.
No, sorry.
No, we can totally edit that out. So I think we're gonna have to like wrap this up. Is there anything that you want to leave, like, you know, anybody watching this video, for them to remember online and on the internet?
Just be honest to yourself, and just be honest to your whatever you're doing. You know, don't have to change faces, change masks, change clothes, just to attend to certain people's needs. I think you should attend to your own needs first before you attend to other people's needs. I think that's, yeah.
Very well said, man. You know, and I really enjoyed my time here with you, interviewing you and getting to know you. You're definitely the real McCoy and a legitimate, honest human being, and I appreciate you for that. And to those of you at home, thank you for joining us on the Sesi Seni organized by Penang Art District. My love goes out to everybody at Penang Art District. They're one of the few people in this community of ours, you know, who are actually day to day helping build the art scene. So to them, thank you. And to everybody who enjoys Penang Hidden Gems and the audience here, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you next time.